Question 1. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a client wishes to deploy an AI-powered customer analytics solution on IBM Cloud to gain a competitive edge. The solution will process sensitive customer data, including purchase history and demographic information. The client is eager to launch quickly, but has expressed minimal understanding of their data protection obligations. What is the most responsible and compliant approach for the IBM Cloud advocate to recommend? Option A. Recommend that the client anonymize all customer data before it is ingested into the AI model, without further consultation on regulatory specifics or impact assessments. Option B. Suggest proceeding with the AI implementation immediately, focusing on the technical aspects of the solution, and addressing data privacy concerns only if a specific regulatory inquiry arises. Option C. Advise the client that IBM Cloud's robust security features will automatically ensure compliance with all data protection regulations, allowing for immediate deployment of the AI solution. Option D. Recommend a phased implementation approach that includes a thorough data privacy impact assessment, DPIA, and consultation with legal and compliance teams to ensure adherence to all applicable data protection regulations before full deployment. The correct answer is D. Recommend a phased implementation approach that includes a thorough data privacy impact assessment, DPIA, and consultation with legal and compliance teams to ensure adherence to all applicable data protection regulations before full deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid innovation and the need for robust data privacy and security. The client's desire to leverage AI for competitive advantage must be balanced against their legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive customer data. The advocate must navigate this by understanding the specific regulatory landscape governing data handling and AI deployment within the relevant jurisdiction. The complexity arises from the evolving nature of AI technologies and the often ambiguous interpretations of existing regulations when applied to novel use cases. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive risk assessment that prioritizes compliance with data protection regulations. This means understanding the specific requirements of the IBM Cloud services being considered, particularly concerning data residency, access controls, encryption, and data anonymization or pseudonymization techniques. It also necessitates a thorough review of the AI model's training data and its potential for bias or privacy breaches. By engaging with legal and compliance teams early, the advocate ensures that the proposed solution aligns with regulatory frameworks, thereby mitigating legal risks and building customer trust. This approach embodies best professional practice by embedding ethical considerations and regulatory adherence into the solution design from the outset. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the AI implementation without a thorough data privacy impact assessment. This is a significant regulatory failure, as it violates principles of data protection by design and by default, which are often mandated by data privacy laws. It exposes the organization to substantial fines and reputational damage for noncompliance. Another incorrect approach is to assume that using IBM Cloud services automatically absolves the client of all data protection responsibilities. While cloud providers offer robust security features, the ultimate responsibility for data governance, consent management, and compliance with specific data processing activities rests with the data controller, the client. Failing to understand and implement these responsibilities is a direct contravention of regulatory obligations. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize speed to market over data security and privacy. This often leads to shortcuts in data handling, inadequate anonymization, or insufficient access controls, all of which can result in data breaches and regulatory penalties. It demonstrates a lack of professional due diligence and in disregard for the ethical imperative to protect individuals' personal information. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud adoption and AI implementation. This involves 1. Identifying all relevant data protection regulations applicable to the client's operations and the data being processed. 2. Conducting a comprehensive data privacy impact assessment, DPIA, for the proposed AI solution, considering data flows, processing activities, and potential risks. 3. collaborating closely with legal, compliance, and security teams to ensure all technical and organizational measures are in place to meet regulatory requirements. 4. Documenting all risk assessments, mitigation strategies, and compliance efforts. 5. Continuously monitoring and reviewing the solution's compliance posture as regulations and technologies evolve. Question 2. Benchmark analysis indicates that a financial services firm is planning to migrate a critical customer data application to IBM Cloud. The firm's leadership is pushing for a rapid deployment to capitalize on new market opportunities. However, the application handles sensitive personal financial information, subject to strict data privacy regulations. The IT team is concerned about ensuring the chosen IBM Cloud services and configurations meet all compliance requirements and security standards before going live. Which of the following approaches best addresses the firm's need for agility while ensuring regulatory compliance and security? Option A. Rely exclusively on IBM's marketing materials and general security documentation to confirm compliance, and deploy the application immediately to meet business deadlines. Option B. Proceed with the deployment of the application on IBM Cloud using default security settings and initiate a compliance audit post-deployment. Option C. Conduct a thorough security and compliance assessment of the proposed IBM Cloud architecture and services, including data residency, access controls, and encryption, before finalizing the deployment plan and migrating the application. Option D. Deploy the application on IBM Cloud and address security and compliance concerns only if a security incident or regulatory inquiry arises. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the deployment of the application on IBM Cloud using default security settings and initiate a compliance audit post-deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud adoption, balancing the desire for rapid innovation with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The challenge lies in the inherent tension between agility and control. Organizations often face pressure to deploy new services quickly to gain a competitive edge, but overlooking security and compliance requirements can lead to significant risks, including data breaches, regulatory fines, and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to identify solutions that enable speed without compromising these critical aspects. The correct approach prioritizes a comprehensive security and compliance assessment before deployment. This aligns with the principle of security by design and compliance by design, which are foundational to responsible cloud governance. By integrating security and compliance checks into the early stages of the cloud adoption lifecycle, organizations can proactively identify and mitigate risks. This approach ensures that the chosen IBM Cloud services and configurations meet all relevant regulatory obligations and internal security policies. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and responsible data handling, which are paramount in maintaining trust with customers and stakeholders, and adhering to evolving regulatory landscapes. An incorrect approach that proceeds with deployment without a thorough security and compliance review fails to uphold the organization's duty of care. This can lead to regulatory noncompliance, potentially resulting in penalties and sanctions. Ethically, it breaches the trust placed in the organization to protect sensitive data. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on vendor-provided security features without independent verification overlooks the shared responsibility model in cloud computing. While IBM Cloud offers robust security, the customer is ultimately responsible for configuring and managing security controls appropriate to their specific data and workloads. Failing to conduct this due diligence is a significant regulatory and ethical lapse. A third incorrect approach that delays security and compliance until after deployment is reactive rather than proactive. This significantly increases the risk of a security incident or compliance violation occurring during the interim period, making remediation more costly and complex. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying potential risks, assessing their likelihood and impact, and then implementing controls to mitigate them. For cloud adoption, this framework should explicitly include security and compliance considerations from the outset. It requires collaboration between IT, security, legal, and compliance teams to ensure all perspectives are considered. Prioritizing a phased approach, where security and compliance are validated at each stage of the cloud journey, is a best practice for managing complex technology deployments. Question 3. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a new IBM cloud service offering enhanced data analytics capabilities is being considered for integration into the existing enterprise architecture. This service promises significant improvements in business intelligence, but involves processing sensitive customer data. What is the most prudent course of action to ensure compliance and security? Option A. Proceed with the integration immediately to leverage the new analytics capabilities, assuming IBM standard security measures are sufficient for all data types. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive security and compliance review of the IBM cloud service and its integration plan against organizational policies and relevant data protection regulations before proceeding with integration. Option C. Delay the integration indefinitely until all potential risks, however minor, are completely eliminated, which may be an impractical goal. Option D. Rely solely on the marketing materials and vendor statements provided by IBM regarding the service's security and compliance features, without independent verification. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive security and compliance review of the IBM cloud service and its integration plan against organizational policies and relevant data protection regulations before proceeding with integration. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an IBM cloud advocate to balance the technical imperative of adopting new cloud services with the critical need for robust data security and compliance. The advocate must navigate potential vulnerabilities introduced by integrating third-party services, understanding that while innovation is encouraged, it cannot come at the expense of regulatory adherence and client trust. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks proactively, rather than reactively, ensuring that the adoption of new IBM cloud services aligns with established security policies and relevant data protection regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, risk-based evaluation before full integration. This aligns with the principle of security by design and privacy by design, which are foundational to responsible cloud adoption. By conducting a comprehensive security and compliance review, the advocate ensures that the chosen IBM cloud services meet the organization's security standards and comply with all applicable data protection laws. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of data breaches, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and responsible stewardship of client data, which is paramount in the cloud advocacy role. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with integration without a formal review. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses essential risk management processes, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access or misuse. This disregard for established security protocols and compliance requirements can lead to severe legal repercussions, including hefty fines under data protection legislation and a loss of client confidence. It is ethically unsound as it prioritizes speed over the safety and privacy of data. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the vendor's assurances without independent verification. While IBM provides robust security measures, organizations have a responsibility to ensure these measures meet their specific compliance obligations and risk appetite. Blindly trusting vendor claims without due diligence is a failure to exercise professional judgment and can lead to compliance gaps. This can result in regulatory noncompliance, as the organization remains ultimately accountable for the protection of its data, regardless of vendor statements. A third incorrect approach is to delay integration indefinitely due to perceived complexity. While thoroughness is important, an inability to adapt and adopt new technologies due to an overly cautious or bureaucratic approach can hinder innovation and competitive advantage. This can indirectly lead to ethical concerns if the organization fails to offer its clients the most secure and efficient solutions available, potentially impacting client outcomes. It also fails to meet the professional obligation of an advocate to facilitate the responsible adoption of beneficial technologies. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-aware decision-making process. This involves 1. Understanding the business and technical requirements for the new IBM cloud service. 2. Identifying potential security and compliance risks associated with the service and its integration. 3. Consulting relevant internal security policies, compliance frameworks, and applicable data protection regulations. 4. Conducting a thorough risk assessment, including evaluating the vendor's security posture and compliance certifications. 5. Developing and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies for identified risks. 6. Obtaining necessary approvals from security, legal, and compliance teams. 7. Planning for ongoing monitoring and management of the service post-integration. This systematic approach ensures that technological advancements are pursued responsibly, safeguarding data and maintaining regulatory adherence. Question 4. Investigation of a multinational corporation's plan to migrate its customer relationship management (CRM) system to IBM Cloud. The CRM system contains sensitive personal data of customers located in various European Union member states. The company's primary objective is to leverage advanced analytics for personalized marketing campaigns. What is the most critical initial step the IBM Cloud Advocate must ensure is undertaken to guarantee compliance with data protection regulations, particularly concerning data sovereignty and the rights of EU data subjects? Option A. Immediately initiating the migration process to leverage the new analytics capabilities, assuming IBM Cloud standard security measures are sufficient for all types of personal data. Option B. Confirming that the chosen IBM Cloud region for data storage and processing is located within the European Union and that the Data Processing Agreement (DPA) with IBM explicitly addresses GDPR requirements for data transfers and subprocessing. Option C. Focusing solely on the technical aspects of data migration and integration, with the understanding that legal and compliance teams will handle regulatory adherence post-migration. Option D. Prioritizing the selection of the most cost-effective IBM Cloud service tier, regardless of its specific data residency or security features, to maximize the return on investment for the analytics project. Correct answer is B. Confirming that the chosen IBM Cloud region for data storage and processing is located within the European Union and that the Data Processing Agreement (DPA) with IBM explicitly addresses GDPR requirements for data transfers and subprocessing. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to data privacy and compliance within the context of cloud service adoption. The core difficulty lies in balancing the business's need for efficient data processing and analytics with the stringent requirements of data protection regulations. Specifically, the organization is handling sensitive customer data, and any misstep in its management or transfer could lead to significant legal repercussions, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The advocate must navigate the complexities of data sovereignty, consent management, and the secure handling of personal information in a cloud environment. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen cloud solution and its implementation adhere to all applicable regulations without unduly hindering business operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough assessment of the data processing activities against the relevant data protection regulations, such as GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, if the jurisdiction implies European Union data, or similar frameworks if a different jurisdiction were specified. This includes identifying the types of personal data being processed, the purposes of processing, and the legal basis for such processing. It necessitates understanding the data's origin and destination, particularly if data is transferred across borders. The advocate must ensure that the chosen IBM Cloud services meet the compliance requirements for data storage, processing, and transfer, including the implementation of appropriate technical and organizational measures, e.g., encryption, access controls, data minimization. Obtaining explicit and informed consent from data subjects for specific processing activities, where required, is paramount. This approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes regulatory adherence and ethical data stewardship, thereby mitigating risks and building trust. It demonstrates a proactive and responsible engagement with data protection obligations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to proceed with cloud migration without a comprehensive data protection impact assessment, DPIA, or equivalent regulatory review. This failure to proactively identify and mitigate risks associated with processing sensitive data in the cloud is a direct violation of regulatory principles that mandate such assessments for high-risk processing activities. It demonstrates a disregard for the potential harm to individuals whose data is being processed. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that all cloud providers inherently offer compliant solutions without verifying specific service configurations and contractual agreements. Relying solely on the provider's general assurances without due diligence regarding data location, security measures, and sub-processor management can lead to non-compliance. This oversight fails to acknowledge the shared responsibility model in cloud security and compliance, where the customer also has significant obligations. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize cost savings or speed of deployment over data protection requirements. This could involve selecting a cloud service that does not adequately support data localization needs or lacks the necessary security certifications for the type of data being handled. Such a decision would be a clear ethical and regulatory failure, as it places business expediency above the fundamental rights of individuals to privacy and data protection. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this domain should adopt a risk-based approach. This involves first understanding the regulatory landscape applicable to the data being handled. Subsequently, a detailed inventory and classification of data assets should be performed, identifying sensitive and personal data. A thorough assessment of proposed cloud services against these data types and regulatory requirements is crucial. This includes reviewing service-level agreements, SLAs, data processing addendums, DPA, and the provider's security certifications. Implementing robust consent management mechanisms and ensuring data minimization principles are followed are also key. Regular audits and reviews of cloud configurations and data handling practices are necessary to maintain ongoing compliance. This systematic process ensures that technology adoption is aligned with legal obligations and ethical considerations. Question 5. What factors determine the most appropriate IBM cloud deployment model for a new customer-facing application that will process personal data of individuals across multiple European Union member states? Option A. The marketing team's preference for a particular IBM cloud service and the IT department's familiarity with specific IBM cloud tools. Option B. The geographic location of the IBM cloud data centers where the data will be stored and processed, and the specific data privacy regulations, e.g., GDPR, applicable to the data subject's residency. Option C. The availability of the latest IBM cloud features and the ease of integration with existing on-premises infrastructure, regardless of data location. Option D. The perceived cost-effectiveness of different IBM cloud service tiers and the speed at which the application can be deployed to market. The correct answer is B. The geographic location of the IBM cloud data centers where the data will be stored and processed, and the specific data privacy regulations, e.g., GDPR, applicable to the data subject's residency. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for rapid deployment of a new cloud service with the imperative to adhere to data privacy regulations. The advocate must navigate the complexities of data residency, consent management, and security protocols without compromising either the business objective or legal compliance. Careful judgment is required to identify the most critical factors that influence the choice of cloud deployment model. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding of the data's sensitivity and the applicable regulatory landscape before making a deployment decision. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, ensuring that privacy and security are embedded from the outset. Specifically, understanding the data's classification and the geographic locations of the data subjects is paramount for complying with regulations like GDPR, if applicable to the exam's implied jurisdiction, which is assumed to be a jurisdiction with robust data protection laws for this scenario. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of regulatory penalties and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering data residency requirements would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for legal obligations, potentially leading to violations of data sovereignty laws and significant fines. Another incorrect approach that overlooks the need for explicit user consent for data processing in specific regions would also be a regulatory and ethical failure. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence in respecting individual privacy rights. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over robust security measures for sensitive data would be a critical ethical lapse, exposing the organization and its users to potential data breaches and associated liabilities. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive data inventory and classification. This should be followed by an assessment of all relevant legal and regulatory requirements based on the data's nature and the locations of data subjects. Subsequently, potential cloud deployment models should be evaluated against these requirements, considering factors such as data residency options, security certifications, and the provider's compliance posture. The final decision should be a well-documented choice that demonstrably balances business needs with regulatory and ethical obligations. Question 6. When evaluating a proposal for a new IBM cloud solution for a financial services client that will handle sensitive customer transaction data, what is the most critical initial step to ensure compliance and security? Option A. Focus on demonstrating the cost-effectiveness and rapid deployment capabilities of the proposed IBM cloud architecture, deferring detailed security and compliance reviews to a later stage. Option B. Conduct a detailed assessment of the client's specific data sensitivity, regulatory obligations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, or relevant financial industry regulations, and existing security posture to inform the design of the IBM cloud solution. Option C. Recommend a generic set of IBM cloud security best practices without a specific analysis of the client's unique data and regulatory landscape. Option D. Immediately propose the most advanced IBM cloud services that offer high performance and scalability, assuming the client's existing compliance measures are sufficient. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed assessment of the client's specific data sensitivity, regulatory obligations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, or relevant financial industry regulations, and existing security posture to inform the design of the IBM cloud solution. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid innovation and the need for robust security and compliance within a regulated industry. The client's desire for a cutting-edge solution must be balanced against the potential risks of data exposure and non-compliance with IBM cloud security best practices and relevant data protection regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the proposed solution is not only technologically advanced, but also secure, compliant, and sustainable. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding of the client's specific data sensitivity and regulatory obligations before proposing any technical solution. This aligns with the principle of security by design and privacy by design, which are fundamental to responsible cloud adoption. By engaging in a detailed risk assessment and compliance review, the advocate ensures that the solution will meet the client's business needs without compromising their legal and ethical responsibilities. This proactive stance builds trust and demonstrates a commitment to long-term client success, adhering to IBM's own guidelines on responsible cloud deployment and data governance. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical capabilities of IBM cloud services, without considering the client's specific data context and regulatory environment, is professionally unacceptable. This failure to conduct due diligence can lead to significant regulatory penalties, data breaches, and reputational damage for both the client and IBM. Another incorrect approach that suggests implementing a solution based on assumptions about compliance, without explicit verification, bypasses critical security and governance checkpoints. This demonstrates a lack of professional rigor and an abdication of responsibility to ensure the client's adherence to legal frameworks. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over security and compliance risks creating a vulnerable system, directly contravening established industry standards and IBM's commitment to secure cloud solutions. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, thoroughly understand the client's business objectives and technical requirements. Second, identify and assess the sensitivity of the data to be processed and stored. Third, determine all applicable regulatory and compliance frameworks. Fourth, conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, considering potential security threats and vulnerabilities. Fifth, design a solution that incorporates appropriate security controls and compliance measures from the outset. Finally, Document all decisions, assessments, and implemented controls to ensure transparency and auditability. Question 7. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the organization is deploying new applications on IBM Cloud that will process sensitive customer data. The development team is eager to leverage advanced analytics services to gain insights, but there's a concern about meeting data residency and privacy regulations. Which of the following approaches best ensures regulatory compliance for these new applications within the IBM Cloud environment? Option A. Implement the new applications and services immediately to capitalize on market opportunities and address any potential compliance issues retrospectively through post-deployment audits. Option B. Proceed with deploying the applications and services as planned, with the understanding that IBM, as the cloud provider, is solely responsible for ensuring all regulatory compliance for the data hosted on their infrastructure. Option C. Assume that IBM's overarching compliance certifications, e.g., SOC 2, ISO 27001, automatically cover all aspects of the organization's regulatory obligations for any data processed on their platform. Option D. Conduct a detailed review of the specific IBM cloud services being used, verifying their compliance certification against the organization's data residency requirements, and understanding the shared responsibility model for each service to implement necessary customer-side controls. Correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed review of the specific IBM cloud services being used, verifying their compliance certifications against the organization's data residency requirements, and understanding the shared responsibility model for each service to implement necessary customer-side controls. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud adoption, balancing the need for rapid innovation and agility with the imperative to maintain robust regulatory compliance. The organization is leveraging IBM cloud services, which necessitates understanding the shared responsibility model and how IBM's compliance certifications, e.g., SOC 2, ISO 27001, interact with the customer's own compliance obligations. The challenge lies in ensuring that the chosen cloud services and their configurations do not inadvertently create compliance gaps, especially when dealing with sensitive data. The pressure to deliver new features quickly can sometimes lead to overlooking critical security and compliance configurations, making a proactive and informed approach essential. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the specific IBM cloud services being utilized and their associated compliance documentation. This includes understanding the data residency requirements and ensuring that the selected IBM cloud regions and services align with these mandates. Furthermore, it requires a detailed examination of the shared responsibility model for each service to identify which security and compliance controls are managed by IBM and which are the customer's responsibility. Implementing appropriate configurations and controls for the customer's responsibilities, and verifying IBM's adherence to its responsibilities through their attestations is paramount. This proactive, documented, and service-specific approach ensures that the organization meets its regulatory obligations by actively managing its part of the compliance framework within the IBM cloud environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on IBM's general compliance certifications without a specific review of the services in use is a significant regulatory failure. While IBM certifications provide a baseline assurance, they do not automatically guarantee compliance for every specific use case or data type. The organization must map its specific data handling requirements and regulatory obligations to the capabilities and attestations of the chosen IBM cloud services. Assuming that all compliance responsibilities are handled by IBM is a critical misunderstanding of the shared responsibility model. This model clearly delineates responsibilities, and the customer always retains accountability for their data and applications. Failure to implement customer-side controls can lead to direct regulatory violations. Implementing new services without a formal risk assessment and compliance validation process is a procedural and ethical failure. This bypasses essential due diligence, increasing the likelihood of unintentional noncompliance and potential data breaches, which can have severe legal and financial repercussions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic, risk-based approach to cloud compliance. This involves 1. Understanding the regulatory landscape applicable to the organization's data and operations. 2. Identifying and categorizing sensitive data. 3. Mapping data requirements to IBM cloud service capabilities and compliance attestations. 4. Thoroughly reviewing the shared responsibility model for each service. 5. Conducting a formal risk assessment that includes compliance considerations before deployment. 6. Implementing and documenting necessary controls for customer-managed responsibilities. 7. Regularly auditing and monitoring configurations to ensure ongoing compliance. 8. Maintaining clear documentation of all compliance-related decisions and actions. Question 8. The efficiency study reveals that a client utilizing IBM cloud services for sensitive financial data may not be fully compliant with data residency regulations applicable within the United States. The client has not explicitly stated their specific data residency needs beyond general compliance. What is the most appropriate course of action for an IBM cloud advocate in this situation? Option A. Inform the client that data residency is solely their responsibility and IBM cannot provide guidance on specific regional deployments. Option B. Advise the client to continue using their current IBM cloud configuration, assuming that standard U.S. data center locations are generally compliant for most financial data. Option C. Proactively engage with the client to identify all applicable U.S. federal and state data residency regulations relevant to their financial data and recommend specific IBM cloud regions and service configurations that meet these requirements. Option D. Suggest implementing a technical workaround that masks the origin of the data, thereby creating the appearance of compliance without directly addressing the underlying residency requirements. Correct answer is C. Proactively engage with the client to identify all applicable U.S. federal and state data residency regulations relevant to their financial data and recommend specific IBM cloud regions and service configurations that meet these requirements. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential gap in how IBM cloud services are being utilized by a specific client, particularly concerning data residency requirements. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves balancing client needs, IBM service offerings, and strict regulatory compliance, all within the context of the C1000-142 IBM Cloud Advocate V2 exam's assumed jurisdiction, which for this context, we will assume is the United States, focusing on relevant U.S. federal regulations and industry best practices. The core challenge lies in ensuring that the client's data is stored and processed in compliance with U.S. data protection laws, such as HIPAA for healthcare data or GDPR-like principles, if the client has international operations that necessitate adherence to similar standards, even if operating within the U.S. Misinterpreting or overlooking these requirements can lead to significant legal, financial, and reputational damage for both the client and IBM. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding of the client's specific regulatory obligations and then aligns IBM cloud services to meet those obligations. This involves proactive engagement with the client to identify all relevant data residency and compliance mandates. IBM Cloud offers various regions and services designed to address these needs, and the advocate's role is to guide the client in selecting and configuring these services appropriately. This demonstrates a commitment to responsible cloud adoption and adherence to legal frameworks, building trust and ensuring long-term client satisfaction. An incorrect approach that involves assuming a default region is sufficient without explicit client confirmation fails to acknowledge the diversity of regulatory landscapes and client-specific requirements. This could lead to a violation of data residency laws, resulting in fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach, which is to suggest a workaround that circumvents data residency controls, is ethically and legally unsound. Such actions directly contravene regulatory frameworks designed to protect data privacy and security, exposing both parties to severe penalties. Finally, an approach that delays addressing the issue until a compliance audit is initiated is reactive and unprofessional. Proactive compliance is a cornerstone of responsible cloud advocacy and risk management. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive discovery phase to understand the client's business, their data types, and all applicable regulatory requirements. This should be followed by a consultative process where IBM cloud capabilities are mapped against these requirements. Documentation of the agreed-upon compliance strategy and ongoing monitoring are crucial steps to ensure sustained adherence. Question 9. Governance review demonstrates that an organization is planning to migrate sensitive customer data to IBM Cloud. The organization operates in multiple jurisdictions with varying data residency and privacy laws. Which of the following actions best ensures compliance with these diverse regulatory requirements? Option A. Proceeding with the migration to the default IBM Cloud deployment region, assuming it is configured to meet general data protection standards. Option B. Prioritizing the cost-effectiveness of IBM Cloud services, and assuming that the provider's global infrastructure inherently satisfies all data residency mandates. Option C. Verifying the specific data residency and processing capabilities of the selected IBM Cloud services against the explicit legal requirements of each relevant jurisdiction, and obtaining contractual assurances from IBM. Option D. Confirming with IBM Cloud support that all services deployed within the chosen region adhere to the strictest data residency laws applicable to any of the organization's operating jurisdictions. The correct answer is D. Confirming with IBM Cloud support that all services deployed within the chosen region adhere to the strictest data residency laws applicable to any of the organization's operating jurisdictions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud adoption, where an organization seeks to leverage IBM Cloud services while ensuring compliance with data residency and privacy regulations. The core tension lies between the flexibility and cost efficiency of cloud services and the strict legal requirements governing where sensitive data can be stored and processed. The challenge is amplified by the potential for data to traverse geographical boundaries within a global cloud provider's infrastructure, even if the primary deployment region is specified. Misinterpreting or inadequately addressing these requirements can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and thorough assessment of IBM Cloud service offerings against the specific data residency and privacy mandates applicable to the organization's industry and operating regions. This includes understanding the geographical locations of IBM Cloud data centers, the data processing and storage capabilities within those regions, and the contractual guarantees provided by IBM regarding data sovereignty. It necessitates engaging with IBM Cloud's compliance and security teams to confirm that the chosen services and configurations meet the stringent requirements. This approach aligns with the principle of due diligence in regulatory compliance, ensuring that the organization has taken all reasonable steps to safeguard sensitive data and adhere to legal obligations. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible cloud governance and risk management. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on the default deployment region without verifying its compliance with all applicable data residency laws is a significant regulatory failure. This approach assumes that the default setting is universally compliant, which is rarely the case for sensitive data. It neglects the specific legal nuances of different jurisdictions and the potential for data to be processed or stored in non-compliant locations, leading to violations of data protection laws. Assuming that all IBM Cloud services inherently meet data residency requirements without explicit verification is another critical failure. Cloud providers offer a wide range of services, and their compliance posture can vary. Without specific confirmation for the services being utilized, the organization risks non-compliance. This approach demonstrates a lack of technical due diligence and an over-reliance on the provider's general reputation. Focusing only on the cost savings of IBM Cloud without a parallel assessment of regulatory compliance is a severe ethical and legal lapse. While cost optimization is a valid business objective, it must never supersede legal and ethical obligations concerning data privacy and residency. This approach prioritizes financial gain over the protection of individuals' data and the organization's legal standing, opening the door to substantial penalties and reputational harm. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with cloud adoption must adopt a risk-based approach to regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Identifying all relevant data residency and privacy regulations applicable to the organization's operations and the data being handled. 2. Thoroughly understanding the capabilities and limitations of the chosen cloud provider's services concerning data location, processing, and security. 3. Engaging in detailed discussions with the cloud provider to obtain explicit confirmations and contractual assurances regarding compliance. 4. Documenting all assessments, decisions, and mitigation strategies to demonstrate due diligence. 5. Implementing continuous monitoring and regular reviews to ensure ongoing compliance as regulations and services evolve. Question 10. The control framework reveals that an organization is migrating sensitive customer data to IBM Cloud and must comply with stringent data privacy regulations. The organization's IT team is debating how to ensure compliance with these regulations within the cloud environment. Which approach best aligns with the IBM Cloud shared responsibility model and regulatory compliance best practices? Option A. Rely on general cybersecurity best practices without specific consideration for IBM Cloud's unique security offerings or the organization's specific regulatory obligations. Option B. Delegate all compliance responsibilities to IBM, assuming they will manage all aspects of regulatory adherence for the data hosted on their platform. Option C. Assume IBM Cloud's infrastructure security is sufficient to meet all regulatory requirements for the organization's data. Option D. Implement a comprehensive security strategy that leverages IBM Cloud's built-in security services and features, while also configuring and managing security controls for the organization's specific applications, data, and access management within their IBM Cloud environment, in accordance with the applicable data privacy regulations. Correct answer is C. Assume IBM Cloud's infrastructure security is sufficient to meet all regulatory requirements for the organization's data. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud environments where the shared responsibility model can lead to confusion regarding compliance obligations. The professional challenge lies in accurately identifying and implementing the correct security controls within the IBM Cloud platform, ensuring adherence to the specific regulatory framework applicable to the organization's data and operations. Misinterpreting or neglecting these responsibilities can result in significant compliance violations, data breaches, and reputational damage. The correct approach emphasizes a thorough understanding of the IBM Cloud shared responsibility model and the specific compliance requirements mandated by the relevant regulatory framework. It involves proactively engaging with IBM's provided security services and documentation, and implementing necessary configurations and controls within the customer's managed environment. This represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principle of due diligence in cloud security and compliance. By leveraging IBM's infrastructure security and focusing on securing the data and applications deployed on top, the organization fulfills its obligations under the shared responsibility model, thereby meeting regulatory mandates. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on IBM's responsibilities fails to acknowledge the customer's role in securing their data and applications. This is a critical regulatory and ethical failure, as it demonstrates a lack of understanding of the shared responsibility model, which is fundamental to cloud compliance. Organizations are legally and ethically bound to protect their data, regardless of where it is hosted. Another incorrect approach that relies on generic security best practices without specific reference to the IBM Cloud environment or the applicable regulatory framework is also professionally unacceptable. While generic practices are valuable, they may not adequately address the specific security features, configurations, and compliance requirements unique to IBM Cloud and the organization's industry. This can lead to gaps in security posture and noncompliance. The professional reasoning process should involve 1. Clearly defining the organization's regulatory obligations. 2. Understanding the IBM Cloud shared responsibility model and identifying which security aspects are managed by IBM and which are the customer's responsibility. 3. Reviewing IBM Cloud documentation and compliance offerings relevant to the identified regulations. 4. Implementing and configuring security controls within the customer's IBM Cloud environment to meet their specific compliance needs. 5. Regularly auditing and testing the implemented controls to ensure ongoing compliance. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a U.S.-based financial services company is planning to migrate sensitive customer financial data to IBM Cloud. The company's primary objective is to leverage cloud scalability and reduce operational costs. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with U.S. financial regulations and data privacy laws while migrating this sensitive data. Option A. Prioritize selecting the most cost-effective IBM cloud services and implement basic security measures, assuming that IBM Cloud's inherent security is sufficient for financial data. Option B. Focus on migrating the data as quickly as possible to realize cost savings, deferring detailed compliance checks and security configuration adjustments until after the migration is complete. Option C. Proceed with a direct lift and shift of existing on-premises financial data management applications to IBM Cloud, relying on existing security configurations without re-evaluation. Option D. Thoroughly review the compliance certifications and security features of IBM Cloud services relevant to financial data processing, and configure them according to the company's specific regulatory obligations and the IBM Cloud Shared Responsibility Model. The correct answer is D. Thoroughly review the compliance certifications and security features of IBM Cloud services relevant to financial data processing, and configure them according to the company's specific regulatory obligations and the IBM Cloud Shared Responsibility Model. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud adoption where an organization is migrating sensitive customer data to IBM Cloud. The professional challenge lies in balancing the benefits of cloud scalability and cost efficiency with the stringent regulatory obligations surrounding data privacy and security. Specifically, the organization must ensure that its chosen IBM Cloud services and configurations meet the compliance requirements of the relevant jurisdiction without compromising the integrity or confidentiality of the data. The complexity arises from understanding the shared responsibility model in the cloud, identifying applicable regulations, and implementing appropriate technical and organizational controls. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the IBM Cloud Shared Responsibility Model and the specific data protection regulations applicable to the customer data being migrated. This means identifying which aspects of security and compliance are the responsibility of IBM as the cloud provider, and which are the responsibility of the customer. It also necessitates a deep dive into the regulatory framework governing the data, e.g., GDPR if customer data is from the EU, CCPA if from California, etc. Assuming U.S. jurisdiction for this exam context, as per instructions *. The professional must then select IBM Cloud services and configure them in a manner that demonstrably meets these regulatory requirements, often involving encryption, access controls, logging, and auditing. This proactive, compliance-driven selection and configuration process is best professional practice because it directly addresses legal obligations, mitigates risks of breaches and penalties, and builds trust with customers. It aligns with the principle of privacy by design and security by design. Incorrect approaches analysis. Prioritizing cost savings above all else without a comprehensive compliance review is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach risks noncompliance, leading to substantial fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. It demonstrates a disregard for legal obligations and the potential harm to individuals whose data is compromised. Selecting IBM Cloud services based solely on perceived ease of use or familiarity, without verifying their compliance capabilities for the specific data type and regulatory environment, is also a failure. This overlooks the critical need to map service features to regulatory mandates, potentially leaving the organization exposed to compliance gaps. It represents a lack of due diligence. Implementing a lift and shift migration strategy without re-evaluating security and compliance configurations for the cloud environment is another failure. While seemingly efficient, this approach often carries over on-premises security assumptions that are inadequate for the cloud's dynamic nature and shared responsibility model. It fails to leverage cloud-native security features and address cloud-specific compliance challenges. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud migration, starting with a comprehensive understanding of the data being migrated, its sensitivity, and the applicable regulatory landscape. This involves conducting a thorough data classification and risk assessment. Next, they must engage with IBM Cloud documentation and experts to understand the shared responsibility model and the compliance certifications of various IBM Cloud services. The selection and configuration of services should be driven by the identified compliance requirements, prioritizing security and privacy controls. Regular audits and continuous monitoring are essential to maintain compliance post-migration. This structured decision-making process ensures that business objectives are met without compromising legal and ethical obligations. Question 12. Quality control measures reveal that a client, operating within a highly regulated industry, is eager to adopt a newly released IBM cloud service for processing sensitive customer data. The client's representative has expressed a strong desire to implement this service immediately due to perceived competitive advantages. As an IBM cloud advocate, what is the most responsible course of action to ensure regulatory compliance? Option A. Immediately recommend the new IBM cloud service to the client, emphasizing its innovative features and assuming it meets all necessary regulatory requirements as an IBM offering. Option B. Advise the client to proceed with the implementation and inform them that their internal legal and IT departments are solely responsible for ensuring compliance with all applicable regulations. Option C. Proactively research the specific data privacy and security compliance documentation for the new IBM cloud service, cross-reference it with the client's known regulatory obligations, and provide a preliminary assessment of potential compliance gaps or requirements before recommending adoption. Option D. Suggest the client delay adoption until IBM releases a specific compliance certification for this new service, even if current documentation indicates it can support regulatory needs. The correct answer is A. Immediately recommend the new IBM cloud service to the client, emphasizing its innovative features and assuming it meets all necessary regulatory requirements as an IBM offering. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid innovation and the imperative of regulatory compliance within the IBM cloud ecosystem. The advocate must balance the desire to leverage new, potentially cutting-edge IBM cloud services with the need to ensure that these services and their implementation adhere to the specific data privacy and security regulations applicable to the client's industry and geographic location. Misinterpreting or overlooking these regulatory requirements can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of client trust. The advocate's role is to proactively identify and mitigate these risks, not to react to them after an incident. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and systematic assessment of the new IBM cloud service against the client's specific regulatory obligations. This includes identifying the data types the service will process, the jurisdictions where that data will reside or be accessed, and the relevant regulatory frameworks e.g., GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, if applicable to the client's context, though for this exam, we focus solely on the principles within the IBM cloud framework and general best practices for cloud advocacy. The advocate must then consult IBM's official documentation, compliance reports, and potentially engage with IBM's compliance teams to understand how the service supports adherence to these regulations. This demonstrates a commitment to responsible cloud adoption and client protection, aligning with the ethical obligations of a cloud advocate to provide accurate and compliant guidance. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding with the assumption that a new IBM cloud service is inherently compliant without verification is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach neglects the advocate's responsibility to understand the specific compliance landscape of the client. It risks exposing the client to data breaches, non-compliance penalties, and legal action. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the sales team's assurances without independent verification. Sales teams are not typically compliance experts, and their focus may be on promoting the service rather than its regulatory implications. This can lead to a false sense of security. Finally, deferring the compliance assessment entirely to the client's internal legal or IT teams without providing initial guidance or flagging potential concerns is also a failure. While the client ultimately bears responsibility, the advocate has a duty to facilitate informed decision-making by highlighting potential compliance hurdles early in the process. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should adopt a risk-based approach. This involves first understanding the client's business, their data handling practices, and their regulatory environment. When considering new cloud services, the decision-making process should include a compliance by design mindset. This means integrating regulatory considerations from the outset, rather than treating them as an afterthought. The advocate should develop a checklist or framework for evaluating new services, focusing on data residency, data processing agreements, security certifications, and audit trails. When in doubt, seeking clarification from IBM's official compliance resources or engaging with the client's compliance officers is paramount. The ultimate goal is to enable the client to leverage IBM cloud services securely and compliantly, fostering trust and long-term partnership. Question 13. Operational review demonstrates the imminent adoption of a new IBM cloud service, but no specific risk assessment framework or guidelines are readily available for this particular service within the organization's current documentation. What is the most appropriate initial step to ensure responsible and compliant adoption? Option A. Initiate a baseline risk assessment by identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts related to the new IBM cloud service, and develop a preliminary mitigation strategy aligned with general IBM cloud security, best practices, and relevant IBM compliance guidelines. Option B. Proceed with the adoption of the new IBM cloud service immediately, trusting in IBM's inherent security measures and assuming minimal risk. Option C. Solely rely on the sales and marketing materials provided by IBM to understand the service's security posture and compliance certifications. Option D. Prioritize the cost-benefit analysis of the new IBM cloud service, deferring any security or compliance considerations until after the service is fully operational. The correct answer is A. Initiate a baseline risk assessment by identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts related to the new IBM cloud service, and develop a preliminary mitigation strategy aligned with general IBM cloud security best practices and relevant IBM compliance guidelines. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud environment where the rapid pace of innovation can outstrip formal risk assessment processes. The professional is tasked with evaluating a new service adoption without a predefined risk framework, requiring them to apply foundational risk assessment principles in a dynamic context. The challenge lies in balancing the potential business benefits of the new service against unknown risks, while adhering to the spirit of regulatory compliance, even in the absence of explicit guidance for this specific service. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the adoption process is not only expedient, but also secure and compliant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves establishing a baseline risk assessment by identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the new IBM cloud service. This includes understanding the service's architecture, data handling capabilities, and security controls. Subsequently, a risk mitigation strategy should be developed, prioritizing controls based on the identified risks and aligning with general IBM cloud security, best practices, and relevant IBM compliance guidelines. This proactive, structured approach ensures that risks are systematically identified, evaluated, and addressed before full adoption, representing best professional practice by embedding security and compliance into the service lifecycle from the outset. This aligns with the general principles of responsible cloud adoption and data protection expected under regulatory frameworks that emphasize due diligence and risk management. Incorrect approach is analysis. Adopting the service immediately without any form of risk assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and a failure to implement reasonable security measures, potentially exposing the organization to data breaches, service disruptions, and non-compliance penalties. Relying solely on the vendors, IBM's, assurances without independent verification is also problematic. While IBM provides robust security, the responsibility for understanding and managing risks within the specific organizational context ultimately rests with the adopting entity. This approach outsources critical risk management functions, which is a failure of governance and oversight. Focusing only on the cost-benefit analysis without considering security and compliance risks ignores fundamental tenets of responsible technology adoption and regulatory requirements that mandate risk-based decision-making. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Understanding the business objective for adopting the new service. 2. Identifying and characterizing the new service and its integration points. 3. Conducting a preliminary risk assessment to identify potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts. 4. Developing and prioritizing mitigation strategies. 5. Implementing controls and monitoring their effectiveness. 6. Documenting the entire process for audit and review. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with both business goals and regulatory obligations. Question 14. The risk matrix shows a critical risk associated with unauthorized access to sensitive customer data due to a misconfigured access control list on a newly deployed IBM Cloud Kubernetes service cluster. What is the most appropriate next step for the IBM Cloud Advocate to recommend? Option A. Document the risk as a known issue and plan to address it during the next scheduled maintenance window. Option B. Escalate the critical risk to the IBM Cloud Security Operations team for immediate investigation and remediation, while simultaneously initiating a review of all access control policies for similar deployments. Option C. Accept the risk temporarily, assuming that the likelihood of exploitation is low given the current monitoring in place. Option D. Immediately implement a strict firewall rule, blocking all external access to the cluster until the misconfiguration is fully resolved and verified. The correct answer is D. Immediately implement a strict firewall rule, blocking all external access to the cluster until the misconfiguration is fully resolved and verified. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud adoption, balancing the need for rapid innovation with robust security and compliance. The risk matrix, a standard tool for visualizing and prioritizing risks, highlights potential vulnerabilities. The professional challenge lies in interpreting the matrix's output and translating it into actionable strategies that align with IBM Cloud security posture and relevant regulatory expectations for cloud services. A key consideration is that IBM Cloud Advocate v2 implies a focus on IBM-specific cloud offerings and their associated best practices, which are designed to meet a range of compliance requirements. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of risk treatment. This means not just identifying risks, but also developing and implementing specific controls to mitigate them. The chosen strategy must be proportionate to the identified risk level and align with IBM security policies and any applicable industry or governmental regulations that IBM Cloud services are designed to support. This ensures a defensible and auditable approach to risk management, demonstrating due diligence and a commitment to protecting sensitive data and services. An incorrect approach would be to ignore or downplay risks that fall into higher categories on the matrix, such as high or critical. This demonstrates a failure to adhere to fundamental risk management principles and could lead to security breaches, data loss, or regulatory noncompliance. Another incorrect approach is to implement generic or unverified security measures without a clear link to the specific risks identified in the matrix. This is inefficient and ineffective, as it may not adequately address the actual threats. Furthermore, failing to document the risk assessment and treatment plan is a significant ethical and regulatory failure, as it prevents accountability and makes it impossible to demonstrate compliance to auditors or stakeholders. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the risk matrix. This involves categorizing risks based on their likelihood and impact. Following this, the framework dictates the selection of appropriate risk treatment strategies: mitigate, transfer, accept, or avoid for each identified risk. The chosen strategy should be documented, implemented, and regularly reviewed. This iterative process ensures that risk management remains a dynamic and effective component of cloud strategy, rather than a one-time exercise. Question 15. Process analysis reveals that a critical business application is slated for migration to IBM Cloud, with significant pressure from stakeholders to complete the migration within a tight deadline. Which approach to risk assessment best aligns with regulatory expectations and professional best practices for this scenario? Option A. Perform a superficial risk assessment that primarily focuses on basic technical vulnerabilities, overlooking broader compliance and operational risks. Option B. Defer the detailed risk assessment until after the application has been successfully deployed and is fully operational in the IBM Cloud environment. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive, phased risk assessment that is integrated into each stage of the migration lifecycle, from planning through post-deployment, with clear mitigation strategies documented for identified risks. Option D. Rely exclusively on IBM's default security configurations and documentation, without conducting an independent assessment of the application's specific risk profile and regulatory requirements. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive, phased risk assessment that is integrated into each stage of the migration lifecycle, from planning through post-deployment, with clear mitigation strategies documented for identified risks. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud adoption, where a critical business application needs to be migrated to IBM Cloud. The core difficulty lies in balancing the urgency of the migration with the imperative to conduct a thorough risk assessment. Stakeholder pressure for rapid deployment can lead to shortcuts, potentially exposing the organization to significant security, compliance, and operational risks. The challenge is to integrate risk management seamlessly into the project lifecycle without unduly delaying essential business functions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased risk assessment integrated into the project lifecycle. This means identifying potential risks at each stage of the migration: planning, design, implementation, testing, deployment, and post-deployment. For each identified risk, appropriate mitigation strategies are developed and documented. This aligns with best practices in cloud governance and risk management, emphasizing a proactive rather than reactive stance. Regulatory frameworks often mandate such a structured approach to ensure data protection, system resilience, and compliance with industry-specific standards. By embedding risk assessment throughout the process, potential issues are addressed early, reducing the likelihood of costly remediation or security breaches. This also supports continuous monitoring and improvement, a key tenet of modern IT governance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to defer the comprehensive risk assessment until after the application is live in the IBM cloud environment. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It violates the principle of security by design and privacy by design, which are often embedded in data protection regulations. Post-deployment risk assessment means that vulnerabilities may have already been exploited, leading to data breaches, service disruptions, or non-compliance penalties. It is far more expensive and damaging to fix issues after they have occurred than to prevent them. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial risk assessment that only focuses on obvious technical vulnerabilities, neglecting broader operational, compliance, and business continuity risks. This is also professionally unacceptable, as it creates a false sense of security. Regulatory requirements often extend beyond technical security to encompass data governance, access controls, disaster recovery, and third-party risk management. A narrow focus can lead to non-compliance with regulations such as GDPR, HIPAA, or industry-specific mandates, resulting in severe financial and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on IBM's provided security features, without conducting an independent assessment of how these features align with the organization's specific risk appetite and compliance obligations. While IBM Cloud offers robust security, the responsibility for configuring and managing these services to meet specific organizational needs ultimately rests with the customer. Failing to perform this due diligence can lead to misconfigurations, inadequate protection, and noncompliance, as the organization has not adequately assessed its own security posture in the context of the chosen cloud services. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach that is iterative and integrated into the project management framework. This involves establishing clear roles and responsibilities for risk management, defining a risk appetite, and implementing a continuous risk assessment and mitigation process. When migrating to IBM Cloud, professionals should leverage IBM's security documentation and best practices, but always validate them against their own organizational requirements and regulatory obligations. A structured approach, starting with a comprehensive understanding of the application's criticality and data sensitivity, followed by identification, analysis, evaluation, and treatment of risks at each migration phase, is paramount. This ensures that security and compliance are not afterthoughts, but integral components of the cloud adoption strategy. Question 16. The control framework reveals that the organization is migrating critical customer data and core business applications to IBM Cloud. While the primary driver is to leverage enhanced scalability and reduce operational costs, there is a recognized need to ensure that this migration does not introduce unacceptable levels of risk or violate any applicable data protection regulations. Which of the following approaches best addresses the inherent risks associated with this cloud migration? Option A. Implement a broad set of generic cybersecurity controls across all migrated applications and data, without a specific assessment of the unique risks posed by the data types or the IBM cloud services being utilized. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to the IBM cloud environment, and the data being migrated, evaluates their potential impact and likelihood, and prioritizes mitigation strategies aligned with regulatory requirements and the organization's risk appetite. Option C. Relies solely on IBM's built-in security features and compliance certifications to ensure the protection of customer data and application integrity, assuming that the cloud provider's controls are sufficient for all organizational needs. Option D. Focus primarily on the cost savings and agility benefits of the migration, deferring detailed risk assessment and mitigation planning until after the migration is complete and operational issues arise. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to the IBM cloud environment, and the data being migrated, evaluates their potential impact and likelihood, and prioritizes mitigation strategies aligned with regulatory requirements and the organization's risk appetite. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud adoption, balancing the need for rapid innovation with robust risk management. The professional challenge lies in identifying and prioritizing risks that could impact the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of sensitive data and critical business operations hosted on IBM Cloud, while also ensuring compliance with relevant regulations. The organization must move beyond a superficial understanding of risks to a proactive and integrated approach that informs strategic decision-making. The correct approach, which involves a systematic assessment of potential threats and vulnerabilities against business objectives and regulatory requirements, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of risk management mandated by various regulatory bodies and industry standards. By identifying specific threats, e.g., unauthorized access, data breaches, service disruptions, and vulnerabilities, e.g., misconfiguration, weak access controls, lack of encryption, and then evaluating their potential impact and likelihood, the organization can develop targeted mitigation strategies. This proactive stance ensures that security and compliance are embedded into the cloud strategy from the outset, rather than being an afterthought. It also allows for informed decisions about resource allocation for security controls and compliance efforts, demonstrating due diligence. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the cost savings or agility benefits of cloud adoption, without a commensurate investment in understanding and mitigating associated risks. This could lead to regulatory noncompliance, data breaches, reputational damage, and significant financial penalties. Another incorrect approach would be to implement generic security controls without a specific risk assessment, which might be ineffective against targeted threats or fail to address unique vulnerabilities within the IBM cloud environment. This approach lacks the specificity required for effective risk management and compliance. A further incorrect approach would be to delegate risk assessment entirely to the cloud provider, without independent verification or understanding of how the provider's controls map to the organization's specific risk appetite and regulatory obligations. While IBM Cloud provides robust security features, the ultimate responsibility for data protection and compliance rests with the customer. The professional reasoning process for such situation should involve a structured risk assessment methodology. This begins with defining the scope of the assessment, identifying critical assets and data, and understanding the regulatory landscape. Next, potential threats and vulnerabilities are identified, followed by an analysis of their potential impact and likelihood. This leads to the prioritization of risks and the development of appropriate mitigation strategies, including the selection and configuration of IBM Cloud security services. Continuous monitoring and regular reassessment are crucial to adapt to evolving threats and changes in the cloud environment. This iterative process ensures that risk management remains a dynamic and integral part of the cloud strategy. Question 17. Cost-benefit analysis shows that adopting a new IBM cloud service offers significant immediate cost savings. However, the service handles sensitive customer data, which approach best aligns with responsible risk management for this scenario. Option A. Proceed with adoption immediately to realize the cost savings, assuming IBM's standard security measures are sufficient. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, including data classification, security control evaluation, and compliance mapping before proceeding with adoption. Option C. Rely solely on the sales team's assurances regarding the service's security and compliance features without independent verification. Option D. Prioritize the cost savings and defer any detailed risk assessment until after the service has been fully implemented and is in production. Correct answer is A. Proceed with adoption immediately to realize the cost savings, assuming IBM standard security measures are sufficient. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the perceived benefits of adopting a new cloud service against the potential risks and the need for robust risk assessment, all within the context of IBM Cloud's operational environment and adherence to general best practices for cloud adoption. The challenge lies in not overemphasizing the immediate cost savings without a thorough understanding of the downstream implications and compliance requirements. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment framework before committing to the new service. This aligns with the principle of proactive risk management, ensuring that potential vulnerabilities, data security implications, and compliance obligations are identified and addressed upfront. This methodical approach minimizes the likelihood of costly remediation, data breaches, or regulatory penalties later in the adoption lifecycle. It demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to secure and compliant cloud operations, which are paramount in any professional IT environment. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate cost reduction without a commensurate risk assessment fails to acknowledge the potential for hidden costs associated with security incidents, compliance failures, or operational disruptions. This can lead to significant financial and reputational damage, violating ethical obligations to protect organizational assets and data. Another incorrect approach that relies on vendor assurances alone without independent verification or internal due diligence is professionally negligent. It outsources critical risk management responsibilities and can lead to unforeseen vulnerabilities that the vendor may not have disclosed or adequately addressed. This bypasses the organization's responsibility to understand and manage its own risk exposure. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with defining clear objectives for cloud adoption, followed by a structured risk assessment process. This process should involve identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, analyzing their likelihood and impact, and developing appropriate mitigation strategies. The cost-benefit analysis should be a component of this broader risk assessment, not the sole driver. Regular review and adaptation of the risk assessment based on evolving threats and service changes are also crucial for maintaining a secure and compliant cloud posture. Question 18. The efficiency study reveals that a new cloud-based analytics service offers substantial operational benefits, but the data processed by this service may be subject to varying international data residency requirements. Which of the following risk assessment approaches best aligns with ensuring regulatory compliance and responsible cloud adoption? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that maps data flows, identifies applicable data residency laws for all potential processing locations, and evaluates the cloud provider's capabilities to meet these requirements, including mechanisms for data localization and sovereignty enforcement. Option B. Focus the risk assessment solely on the technical performance and security features of the service, as data residency is a secondary concern to operational efficiency. Option C. Rely on the cloud provider's general compliance statements and certifications to assume that all data residency requirements will be met without further investigation. Option D. Prioritize the immediate implementation of the service to capture cost savings, deferring any detailed data residency risk assessment until after the service has been fully deployed and is operational. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that maps data flows, identifies applicable data residency laws for all potential processing locations, and evaluates the cloud provider's capabilities to meet these requirements, including mechanisms for data localization and sovereignty enforcement. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals that a new cloud-based analytics service, while promising significant cost savings and performance improvements, introduces novel data residency and sovereignty risks. The challenge lies in balancing the potential business benefits against the imperative to comply with data protection regulations relevant to the exam's jurisdiction. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of how cloud service deployment impacts regulatory compliance, moving beyond a simple technical assessment to a comprehensive risk management strategy. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment that specifically identifies and quantifies the potential impact of data residency and sovereignty issues on the organization's compliance posture. This includes understanding where the data will be processed and stored, the legal frameworks governing those locations, and the implications for data subject rights and regulatory reporting. This approach represents best professional practice because it proactively addresses potential compliance gaps before service deployment, aligning with the principles of data protection by design and by default, and ensuring that technological adoption does not inadvertently lead to regulatory breaches. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation and risk mitigation, which are core tenets of professional conduct in the cloud advocacy domain. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the service adoption based solely on the projected cost savings, without a detailed risk assessment of data residency. This fails to acknowledge the legal and regulatory obligations associated with data handling, potentially leading to violations of data protection laws. Another incorrect approach is to assume that the cloud provider's standard compliance certifications are sufficient without verifying their applicability, the specific data types and processing activities involved, and without understanding the shared responsibility model for data protection. This oversight can result in a false sense of security and expose the organization to significant legal and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach is to defer the risk assessment to a later stage, after the service is already in production. This reactive stance is professionally unsound, as it increases the likelihood of non-compliance and the cost of remediation, undermining the principles of proactive risk management and due diligence. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and risk management alongside technological and business objectives. This involves a multi-stakeholder approach, engaging legal, compliance, and IT teams early in the evaluation process. The framework should include steps for identifying relevant regulations, assessing the impact of proposed solutions on compliance, developing mitigation strategies for identified risks, and establishing ongoing monitoring mechanisms. This ensures that decisions are informed by a holistic understanding of potential consequences and adhere to the highest professional and ethical standards. Question 19. The performance metrics show consistent underutilization of provisioned resources for a critical application, yet the application is experiencing intermittent latency spikes that are nearing the threshold of the agreed-upon service level agreement, SLA. The current service tier is the highest available for this offering. What is the most appropriate next step to address this situation? Option A. Investigate the application's internal architecture and code for potential bottlenecks or inefficient processing that might be causing the latency spikes, independent of the current resource provisioning. Option B. Immediately downgrade the service tier to a lower, less expensive option to reduce operational costs, assuming the underutilization indicates over-provisioning. Option C. Request an immediate upgrade to an even higher, custom provision tier to proactively eliminate any potential for future latency issues. Option D. Implement aggressive caching strategies and optimize database queries to reduce the load on the application servers, even if it means a slight increase in complexity. The correct answer is A. Investigate the application's internal architecture and code for potential bottlenecks or inefficient processing that might be causing the latency spikes, independent of the current resource provisioning. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in cloud environments, balancing performance optimization with cost efficiency and adherence to service-level agreements, SLAs. The professional challenge lies in interpreting performance metrics to make informed decisions that impact both operational effectiveness and financial outcomes, while also ensuring compliance with IBM Cloud's terms of service and any applicable data governance regulations. A key aspect is understanding that performance is not a monolithic concept. It encompasses latency, throughput, availability, and resource utilization, all of which can be influenced by the chosen service tier and configuration. The correct approach involves a holistic evaluation of the performance metrics in conjunction with the defined SLAs and cost implications. Best professional practice dictates a data-driven decision-making process that prioritizes meeting contractual obligations, SLAs, while seeking the most cost-effective solution. This means analyzing if the current performance levels are sufficient to meet the SLA targets, and if not, identifying the root cause. If the metrics indicate overprovisioning, then right-sizing the resources to a lower tier or adjusting configurations to match actual demand is the most efficient and cost-effective strategy, directly aligning with responsible resource management and financial stewardship. This approach ensures that client expectations are met without incurring unnecessary expenditure, which is a core tenet of professional cloud advocacy. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on reducing costs without considering the impact on performance and SLAs. For instance, immediately downgrading to the lowest cost tier without verifying if it can sustain the required performance levels would likely lead to SLA breaches, impacting client trust and potentially incurring penalties. This demonstrates a failure in due diligence and a disregard for contractual obligations. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore cost implications entirely and simply over-provision resources to guarantee peak performance, even when demand is consistently lower. This leads to financial inefficiency and is not a sustainable or responsible practice. A third incorrect approach might involve making changes based on anecdotal evidence or assumptions rather than concrete performance metrics, leading to suboptimal configurations and potential disruptions. These failures represent a lack of analytical rigor and a departure from best practices in cloud resource management and client service. The professional reasoning process should involve 1. Clearly defining the performance requirements and associated SLAs. 2. Continuously monitoring relevant performance metrics. 3. Analyzing the correlation between resource utilization, performance, and cost. 4. Identifying discrepancies between actual performance and SLA targets. 5. Evaluating potential solutions for optimization, considering both performance and cost. 6. Implementing changes methodically and monitoring their impact. 7. Communicating findings and recommendations transparently to stakeholders. Question 20. Assessment of the most effective strategy for ensuring a newly deployed IBM cloud solution adheres to data protection regulations and security best practices, considering the need for agile development and cost efficiency. Option A. Implement a comprehensive security review process that includes granular access control configuration, data encryption strategies, and continuous monitoring, aligning with IBM Cloud's shared responsibility model and relevant data privacy regulations. Option B. Focus solely on leveraging IBM Cloud's built-in security features without custom configuration, prioritizing rapid feature delivery over detailed security hardening. Option C. Adopt a deploy first, secure later approach, addressing security concerns only after the solution has been launched and initial user feedback is gathered. Option D. Disable non-essential security features to reduce operational overhead and accelerate deployment, assuming IBM Cloud's default security measures are sufficient for all data types. The correct answer is A. Implement a comprehensive security review process that includes granular access control configuration, data encryption strategies, and continuous monitoring, aligning with IBM Cloud's shared responsibility model and relevant data privacy regulations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud adoption, balancing the desire for rapid innovation and cost optimization with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The pressure to deliver new features quickly can lead to overlooking critical security configurations or adopting services without a thorough understanding of their regulatory implications. Professionals must exercise sound judgment to ensure that business objectives do not compromise adherence to established security best practices and relevant IBM Cloud Service Level Agreements, SLAs, and compliance frameworks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and systematic evaluation of the proposed cloud solution against established security benchmarks and IBM Cloud's documented best practices for data protection and access control. This includes understanding the shared responsibility model, where IBM provides security asterisk of asterisk the cloud, but the customer is responsible for security asterisk in asterisk the cloud. Implementing granular access controls, data encryption at rest and in transit, and regular security audits are fundamental to meeting compliance requirements and protecting sensitive data. This aligns with the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are cornerstones of secure cloud architecture, and are implicitly supported by IBM Cloud security offerings and documentation. Adhering to these principles ensures that the solution is not only functional, but also secure and compliant with relevant data privacy regulations that IBM Cloud services are designed to support. Incorrect approaches analysis. Prioritizing immediate cost savings by disabling security features or using default configurations without review is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This directly contravenes the principle of due diligence in protecting sensitive data and can lead to breaches, reputational damage, and noncompliance with data protection laws. Demonstrates a disregard for the shared responsibility model and the inherent security risks associated with cloud environments. Adopting a move fast and break things mentality without a formal security review process is another critical failure. This approach bypasses essential risk assessment and mitigation steps, exposing the organization to vulnerabilities that could be exploited. It ignores the regulatory requirement for organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. Relying solely on IBM's inherent security features without implementing customer-specific configurations and monitoring is insufficient. While IBM Cloud provides a secure foundation, it is the customer's responsibility to configure and manage security controls within their specific environment to meet their unique compliance obligations and threat landscape. This oversight can lead to gaps in security posture and potential noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to cloud security. This involves understanding the data being handled, the regulatory requirements applicable to that data, and the potential threats. Before deploying any cloud solution, a comprehensive security assessment should be conducted, focusing on access controls, data encryption, network security, logging/monitoring. Collaboration between development, security, and compliance teams is crucial. Regularly reviewing IBM Cloud documentation for security best practices and updates, and staying informed about evolving regulatory landscapes are essential for maintaining a secure and compliant cloud environment. The decision-making process should always prioritize security and compliance, even when faced with pressure for rapid deployment.